If one of the industries that has the potential to bring some sort of stability to Pakistan's economy, if you're also going to curtail those that industry in particular and create an environment that is not favorable to businesses and also the investors, then we're not just impacting people's rights, as we discussed, but we're also impacting the people's right to do business, and sort of lively and to earn livelihood as well. So it's not just about whether civil liberties are protected or not, or how they're being stifled, but then also whether people can earn a living in the country or not.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today in the Digital Rights series for Dawn News English. I have with me today Hija Kamran, who's a digital rights advocate, and recently she wrote a very detailed article on virtual private networks in relation to the bandwidth problems that we've been experiencing with the internet, slow internet speeds, also a lot of statements that are coming out by the government and the PTA about VPNs. Specifically, the Minister for State saying that it's VPN usage, which has essentially caused the internet slowdown. And on the other hand, the PTA chairman saying that they're not blocking VPNs and they understand that businesses need them to function. But there's been a lot of VPN, over the years, announcements that they're going to be blocked or registered, especially with regulations that have been in place. Could you explain basically what you've laid out in the article before we get into the bit about like what the regulations are? If you can explain for the audience, what is a VPN, how does it work, and what is the purpose of a VPN?
So, as the audience understands how people in Pakistan have been using VPN so far, it is to access censorship or block websites in the country. How it works is essentially it creates a tunnel between your device, the internet traffic, and the websites or the content that you're trying to access. It masks your IP address, which is an identification for your network, and assigns a new IP address to your traffic data. What it means is that if you are able to connect to the internet traffic or the blocked content through another IP address. For example, people must be aware by now, because of the amount of VPN usage that has been increased in Pakistan. People now are sort of aware that when they open VPN, they see the location being changed from, for example, Pakistan to say somewhere in the US. So it assigns you an IP address in the US. So now the data that you're, or the content that you're accessing, it is being directed from you to the US IP address and then back to you through the VPN client. But then it also masks or gives a new identity to your traffic data. And then if somebody tries to access or tries to locate you physically, by tracking your IP address, it becomes harder for them to come back to trace your identity back to your original IP address in Pakistan, and it shows your IP address that the VPN client has assigned to you in the US. So this is essentially how VPN works.
So Hija, in the Pakistani context, obviously the VPN usage and the surge presently has been more as a circumvention tool, right? Whereas typically the purpose of a VPN is also additional privacy. Can you speak to a little bit more about, and also your article discusses this, right? So VPN from a privacy perspective connected to everything that is happening with respect to the so-called firewall. And we know that these are basically various combination of tech tools as is emerging. So in terms of IP traces, VPNs mask your IP. And on the other hand, you have a layer of regulations, and from time to time, the PTA has announced that you have to register and whitelist. So what do you think is the purpose of that? And does that defeat the purpose of a VPN?
It definitely defeats the purpose of a VPN. One of the primary tools of VPN is to mask your identity. People around the world, including journalists at risk or human rights activists at risk, they use VPN for their primary internet usage because they want their privacy to be intact. They don't want state and non-state actors to trace their identity back, because the nature of the work puts them and people related to them at risk. When there is a need to, when there is a regulation that demands people to register VPNs, it kills the purpose of having it in the first place, because at the end of the day, the idea is to protect the identity of people and the IP addresses that the VPNs assign to these clients to protect themselves, right? So when there's a need to register these VPNs and IP addresses, it means that state actors or regulators, they can trace the identity of the traffic data back to the person who is accessing this, because IP addresses are unique to every network, every device. So now when IP addresses are unique to networks, if I have a network in Pakistan and I'm accessing the traffic data and my VPN is registered with the government, the government can trace back the traffic that is being accessed to my VPN, because of the registration of the VPN, my new IP address that the VPN could or potentially would assign to my network data, that is also registered to the government. So it definitely kills the purpose of having a VPN in the first place, because now if I am a human rights activist or I'm a journalist who works in the context of investigations that can put them or their security at risk.
Could you also walk us through the various regulations, right, that exist with respect to VPNs? Because there's always this confusion every now and then when these announcements are made, and also otherwise, well, is the VPN illegal, is it not illegal, etc., and all of this happens. So what are some of the regulations with respect to IP masking or VPNs that exist in Pakistan?
So the first one that may not be directly related, but it is in some context, it does regulate the internet traffic in that sense. One is from 2010. This is monitoring and reconciliation of telephony traffic data. It focuses on monitoring and controlling international telephony data, and particularly to prevent illegal voice IP services. And it also ensures revenue collection from international calls, right? So in 2010, there were a lot of talks about this, but then afterwards as well, when VPN registration situation started to take started to get a lot of attention in the country. This is one regulation that sort of gives the government some sort of power to regulate VPNs, but it's not directly related to VPNs. It is about sort of monitoring international traffic. So in that sense, it can be or it has been used in the past to sort of justify why they're doing VPN regulation, under what regulation. But apart from that, not just VPN regulation, but we have a lot of because when you talk about VPN registration, and because we've already established that they also directly violate right to privacy, this regulation violates right to privacy as well. That also means that there are certain regulations that legalize surveillance in the country as well, and those can also be used to justify these directives of VPN regulations. One is, of course, the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, which is Section 30, under which Section 31, 32, and 39, and these are also related to other firewall discussions that we're having in the country. Section 31 talks about expedited preservation and acquisition of data. Then Section 32 talks about retention of traffic data, how long that data is going to be retained with service providers, in order for law enforcement authorities to be able to access when and if there's a need. And then there's also Section 39, which talks about real-time collection and recording of data. Then we also have the Investigation for Fair Trial Act 2013, under which Section 5 and Section 9 are indirectly related to this conversation as well, which talk about recording of suspicious conduct, and also Section 39, which gives the powers of the judges to issue warrant in chambers, just secret warrants to be issued for the purpose of surveillance and interception when there is a need to. And then there is from 1996 there is a Pakistan Telecommunication Reorganization Act, under which Section 54 talks about national security, and it authorizes the government to intercept calls and messages or trace calls through any telecommunication system. So these, along with VPN regulations, they sort of create a framework of legalizing surveillance and gives the authorities power to violate citizens' right to privacy, but then also interconnected rights as well, which is freedom of expression, access to information, and various other rights. And then we also have a judgment from 1996, in the case of Benazir Bhutto and President of Pakistan, which talks about how mass surveillance or interception of phone calls is essentially unconstitutional, and it's not just in violation of right to privacy, but it also is in violation of right to dignity and life. So we see that this legal framework that exists right now, it directly affects civil liberties in the country.
Hijra, finally, going forward, because there is still a lot of talk, and from time to time this comes up, so either through the existing laws and regulations that you mentioned, or if they intend to introduce specific VPN related. Of course, there's a lot of surveillance and interception happening otherwise also, and seemingly enhanced capability now, where traffic data does have a trace back to you, and the IPs do bring a trace back to you, and there's a civil liberties aspect. From a business perspective as well, because the only thing that the PTA chairman said is, oh, businesses will be impacted, so we're not blocking, but we will register. Why do businesses use VPNs, and is it integral to how they function, and what impact do you foresee, in addition to the civil liberties one, on the industry specifically?
I'll give you an example from business perspective. People who work in banks, for example, they're not allowed to access the internet from a Wi-Fi network when they are at their office space. It's always that wired network that they connect their laptops to, and then their laptops are not they're not allowed to connect their laptops to any sort of Wi-Fi as well, because of the risks connected to risks associated to the kind of work that they do, because they're dealing with a lot of financial information, people's finances as well. So they have their own networks, their own intranet that they're operating on, and that is important because of the nature of the work. Similarly, there are other businesses that use the same model, but then there are tech companies, startups, for example. In the past couple of years, we noticed a boom in startup industry in Pakistan, tech startups particularly, and then we also noticed a decline in those tech startups success, for example, or the funding that they were receiving, primarily because of the unstable internet regulatory regime in the country. What it does is, because investors or funders from outside of the country, they see these kind of regulations being passed, or the unreliability of the internet, or the unreliability of tech infrastructure or tech industry in the country, they're hesitant to invest. And coupled with all the other regulations that the country or other frameworks that the country or the government has been trying to push for in the country, for example, firewalls, surveillance and the censorship regime that we're seeing right now, and on top of that, VPN regulations, there naturally some sort of hesitation from international investors to invest in Pakistani businesses. And we've already seen that Pasha has estimated that this is going to cost like $300 million to Pakistan's digital economy, and that is worrying because Pakistan already is going through economic turmoil right now. So in that situation, if one of the industries that has the potential to bring some sort of stability to Pakistan's economy, if you're also going to curtail that industry in particular and create an environment that is not favorable to businesses and also the investors, then we're not just impacting people's rights, as we discussed, but we're also impacting the people's right to do business and and to earn livelihood as well. So it's not just about whether civil liberties are protected or not, or how they're being stifled, but then also whether people can earn a living in the country or not.
Thank you, Hijra, for joining Dawn News English today for the Digital Rights series. This has been supremely helpful, and it's incumbent upon the policymakers and the regulator to heed what is being said, not only from a civil liberties perspective, which is incredibly important, but also from an industry perspective in terms of what this is going to do to the digital economy and the digital space. And you cannot have Digital Pakistan claims or want to protect data privacy if these are the kind of measures that you are going to take. That's all for today. Thank you.